Have you ever stopped, really stopped, and wondered, when exactly did it all start to fall apart? There was a time when everything felt like it was moving in the right direction, when you were the one people looked at with wide eyes and quiet pride, when teachers told your parents how advanced you were, when your family joked about how you were destined for great things, when everyone expected you to take off like a rocket. And maybe, for a while, you believed them. You got things faster than most. You barely tried but still stood out. You understood what others didn't, and it made you feel like the world might just open up for you. You didn't have to fight for attention. It came to you. You didn't have to prove yourself. You already were someone, the one who had potential, the one who was going to make it. But now you wake up and feel nothing, not panic, not peace, just that strange, hollow rhythm of existence that never quite feels real. You work, you study, you respond, you smile, but deep down, something feels missing, like you've been watching your life from behind a thick, invisible glass, close to everything, but connected to nothing. You're not failing, not visibly, but you're not alive either. And maybe that's the worst part. There's no obvious crisis, no breakdown to point to, just this quiet unraveling happening somewhere deep inside you, a growing ache you can't name, a fatigue that doesn't come from your muscles, but from your soul. And here's where it gets cruel. You still feel the need to look brilliant. You still carry the weight of their expectations. You still try to be the smart one, even when you feel completely lost. You wear the same mask you learned as a kid, the one that says, "I'm fine, I've got this." But behind it, there's a voice that whispers, "If I'm so smart, why does everything feel so heavy? If I'm so capable, why do I feel so behind? If I was the one who was going to make it, why do I feel like I've disappeared?" And maybe, just maybe, it's not because you were never smart. Maybe it's because the very thing they praised you for is the thing that's been slowly destroying you from the inside out. It didn't begin with failure. It began with praise. You were the one who got it early, the kid who read faster, solved quicker, understood deeper. You didn't just do well. You made it look effortless. You didn't just impress your teachers. You became their story. Your parents introduced you like a prodigy. You weren't just a child. You were a promise. And at first it felt like power. Because when you're that kid, the one who gets it right on the first try, the world opens for you. Smiles appear. Expectations rise. Compliments rain down. And you, so small and soft and open, start to absorb all of it. You feel seen, loved, chosen. But love that's based on brilliance comes with a price. Because the moment you sense that this is why people admire you, you silently make a pact with yourself. I must never let them see me not know. I must always be the one who understands. Carl Rogers would call this the construction of the false self, when who you are begins to fade behind who you feel you must be in order to keep being loved. And for you, that self was made of sharpness, speed, and certainty. It wore confidence like armor. It wore ease like a mask. So you learned to hide confusion, to nod even when you didn't understand, to withdraw from challenges you couldn't instantly master, to perform curiosity when deep down you were afraid of what it might expose, not because you didn't care, but because you were terrified of shattering the image. You were never allowed to try, only to succeed. Never allowed to ask, only to answer. Never allowed to feel lost, only to lead. And the more you played the role, the more real it became. People kept clapping, but you stopped feeling seen because they weren't applauding you. They were applauding your function. You had become a mirror for their admiration, not a person. And when the applause faded, you realized something chilling. You didn't know who you were outside of being impressive. You'd built your identity around performance. But performance can't hold you when things get quiet. Performance doesn't hug you when you fail. Performance doesn't say, "It's okay not to know." So you started to disappear. You chose only what you knew you'd master. You avoided anything unpredictable. You lost the joy of learning, boss, because now, learning meant admitting you didn't know yet. And you were trained to believe that not knowing was weakness. You weren't born for applause. You were born to be alive. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being a child with curiosity and became a system of defenses built around a single idea. I must always be enough. But the more you protected yourself, the less you felt anything at all. Praise feels good, until it doesn't. When you're young, It's almost addictive. Every time someone calls you brilliant, your chest fills with pride. Every time they say, "You're so mature for your age," you stand a little taller. Every time you hear you're going to go far, it feels like the future is already secured. You're not just doing well, you're being seen, celebrated, chosen. But beneath that sweet surface, something else starts growing. Fear. The fear of disappointing them. The fear of no longer being the one they talk about. The fear of not living up to the story they've built around you. That's how praise, something that looks like love, becomes poison. Psychologist B.F. Skinner studied this deeply. He discovered that when a certain behavior is rewarded consistently, it gets repeated. This is called reinforcement. And the stronger the reward, the stronger the repetition. But what happens when the reward isn't just a cookie or a gold star, but identity? You weren't just praised for trying hard. You were praised for doing it easily, not for being brave enough to ask questions, but for always having the answers, not for failing and learning, but for succeeding without effort. So the behavior that got reinforced was perfection, speed, certainty, control. You started chasing those rewards unconsciously. You avoided anything that didn't guarantee praise. You pulled away from things that required real learning. You chose the safe path, the path where applause still lived. And the reinforcement worked. People kept calling you gifted. They kept expecting you to shine. They kept putting you in positions where you had to seem like you already knew. And little by little, the message became clear. Your worth is conditional. It lives in performance, in image, in outcome. So what did you do? You learned to hide every sign of effort. You laughed when you got good grades without studying. You downplayed your preparation. You pretended not to care, even when you cared deeply. Because if you showed effort, people might think you were just average. If you studied hard, they'd assume you're not naturally smart. If you struggled, they'd see through you. If you failed, maybe they'd stop loving you. And that's how brilliance becomes a cage. The more they applauded your ease, the more ashamed you felt of your humanity. You learned to feel guilty for trying, to feel weak for needing help, to feel embarrassed for not knowing. You weren't just being conditioned to succeed, you were being conditioned to hide. And now, as an adult, the chain still pulls. You hesitate before taking on anything new. You second-guess yourself in moments of vulnerability. You wait for the perfect moment, because you still think mistakes are a kind of betrayal. The praise they gave you wasn't praise at all. It was a script, and you've been acting it out for years, flawlessly. You learned to smile at the praise, but over time the applause faded, and what remained was the voice. The one that whispers when you hesitate, the one that echoes when you make a mistake, the one that doesn't speak like a stranger, but like you. It says things you'd never tell a friend, but you say them to yourself every day. Why is this so hard for you? You should have known better. You're slipping. Everyone can see it. It doesn't scream. It doesn't curse. It doesn't need to. It just sits in the quiet, feeding you half-truths, turning effort into failure, turning pause into proof of incompetence, turning human moments into shame. This is your inner critic, and it didn't come from nowhere. It was built, slowly, subtly, from every moment you were told you were exceptional. Because if being smart was your identity, then struggle became a threat. And if ease was the standard, then effort became humiliation. Aaron Beck, the father of cognitive therapy, studied how our thoughts shape our emotions. He called them cognitive distortions, invisible patterns in your thinking that twist reality into something darker, heavier, crueler. Like all or nothing thinking. If I'm not brilliant, I'm worthless. Like catastrophizing. If I fail at this, I'll never recover. Like personalization. If someone is disappointed, it's my fault. I'm the problem. And when those distortions get repeated enough, they don't feel like thoughts anymore. They feel like truth. So now, you live with a voice inside you that doesn't encourage, doesn't support. It measures. It doesn't ask if you're okay. It asks why you're not already better. And the worst part? It sounds like you. It borrows your tone. It uses your memories. It knows exactly where you're most fragile. And it presses there. You think it's making you better, that it's holding you accountable, that it's the voice of your higher self. But it's not. It's the shadow of your conditioning. It's not helping you grow. It's keeping you small. Because as long as that voice keeps you doubting, you won't take risks. You won't try new things. You won't expose the parts of you that are still learning, still human. You'll stay in your safe zone, where no one claps anymore, but at least no one sees you fall. And this is how self-sabotage is born. Not out of laziness, not out of apathy, but out of fear. Fear of finding out that the image they praised isn't who you really are. So you stay still, you overthink, you analyze every move in advance, and meanwhile, life keeps moving without you. When you start to feel unsafe just being yourself, you build something to survive, a mask. At first it's subtle, a quiet deflection here, a sarcastic comment there. You laugh off the things that actually sting. You act like you don't care, even when it's killing you inside. You start to notice which version of you gets the best reactions, and you start rehearsing that one. You become polished, controlled, efficient, unshakable. But what nobody sees is that every bit of that polish is armor, not confidence, camouflage. Carl Jung called this the persona, the version of ourselves we present to the world, not to connect, but to protect. It's not who we are, it's who we learned we need to be in order to stay safe, accepted, unhurt. You become the funny one, the competent one, the I'm fine one, the person who always has it together, because letting anyone see the mess behind your eyes feels unbearable. You perform certainty. You speak only when you've already calculated the outcome. You keep conversations light, controlled, or intellectual, because emotions are too volatile, too raw, too unpredictable. And it works. People admire you. They say you're strong. They say they wish they were more like you. But inside, you feel like a ghost wearing your own face, because the more the mask fits, the less you feel seen. They love the version of you that never flinches, never doubts, never breaks. But what about the you that does? You start to realize, the better you are at playing the role, the more alone you become. And the cost of that performance? Intimacy. Because to be truly close to someone, you have to let them see what's behind the armor. But how can you do that when you don't even know what's there anymore? You've spent so long curating the performance that even in silence, you're still editing yourself. You don't relax. You monitor. You don't speak freely. You filter. You don't feel deeply. You analyze. And after a while, even your loneliness becomes part of the act. You tell yourself you prefer being alone, that others wouldn't understand, that you're just built differently. But none of that is true. What's true is this: you're exhausted, not from doing too much, but from hiding everything that's real. The mask you built to survive became the wall that keeps you alone. And now, even when someone wants to see you, really see you, you don't know how to take it off, because the armor isn't on your body, it's under your skin, in your voice, in your smile. And the scariest part, you're not even sure who's underneath it anymore. You wake up, you check your phone, you answer emails, you work, you reply to messages, you laugh at the right moments, you say all the right things, and still, you feel nothing. Not sadness, not despair, just nothing. A soft, sterile fog has settled where your feelings used to live. You're not in pain, but you're not alive either. This is what it means to be numb but still functioning. From the outside, everything looks fine. You're stable, you're productive, you show up, but inside you feel like a ghost in your own routine. A background actor in a life you used to dream about. It didn't happen all at once. It began the moment you decided that being vulnerable was too risky, that asking for help was embarrassing, that feeling deeply was inefficient. So you rewired yourself. You started editing emotions before they surfaced. You turned pain into productivity. You turned longing into logic. You turned fear into silence. You stopped feeling not because you were weak, but because you were trying to survive in a system that only applauded composure. But here's the truth. You weren't born numb. You learned to be. According to Lisa Feldman Barrett, emotions are not hardwired reflexes. They are constructed, built from past experiences, from language, from patterns we repeat, which means we can also learn to suppress them. And that's exactly what you did. You constructed numbness. You taught your body not to react. You trained your nervous system to stay flat, quiet, unbothered. And now, even when something should hurt, you just blink. Even when something should excite you, you stay still. You watch movies and feel disconnected. You listen to music and feel empty. because you've gotten so good at not feeling the bad stuff that you forgot how to feel the good stuff too. This isn't peace, it's paralysis. It's what happens when you trade all your emotional wiring for self-control. When your nervous system has one job, don't break character, and the cost. You can't connect anymore. Not deeply, not truly. You can understand others. You can read them. You can support them. But you can't let them in. You operate through cognitive empathy, the ability to know what others feel, without feeling it with them. Because to feel with them would require you to access what you've hidden in yourself. And that's a door you no longer know how to open. So you keep performing, smiling on cue, helping where needed, delivering what's expected. And inside, something keeps slipping further away. Not because you've failed, but because you've protected yourself so well that now even you can't reach the real you. It doesn't happen with a scream. It happens in silence. Not the dramatic kind, but the kind no one notices. The kind where you stop laughing at jokes you used to love, where you cancel plans without knowing why, where you look at yourself in the mirror and feel like you're looking at someone else. Something in you begins to crack, not loudly, but constantly. You still wake up, you still work, you still respond, but there's a quiet collapse happening inside you. The identity you spent years perfecting, the smart one, the strong one, the unshakable one, no longer fits. But you don't know what else there is. You feel like a building still standing, even though the foundation has already crumbled. You keep playing the role, but it's empty now. You say the lines. You smile in meetings. You nod when people speak. But behind your eyes, there's a fog, a strange disconnection, a sense that you're just mimicking what a person should be doing. And the worst part? No one sees it, because the performance still works, because you've trained everyone to expect the version of you that never breaks. So they applaud you for coping. They admire your discipline. They say you're doing amazing, and you smile, but inside it's hollow. Gabor Mate speaks of trauma not just as what happens to you, but as what happens inside you when you're forced to abandon your true self in order to be accepted. And that's what this is. It's not about one big event. It's about the years you spent disconnecting from your own feelings. The moments you told yourself, "I'm fine," when you weren't. The way you made yourself small to keep the image intact. You abandoned parts of yourself, not because you wanted to, but because you were trying to stay loved. And now, those abandoned parts are calling back, not with words, but with emptiness, with numbness, with a fatigue that sleep can't fix. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're just tired of being someone you're not. You don't know how to relax into who you are, because you've never felt safe doing that. You've learned how to impress, how to achieve, how to stay controlled, but you were never taught how to just be. So now you're stuck between two identities, the one you've outgrown and the one you haven't met yet. And that space in between, it's terrifying, it's confusing, but it's also honest. It's the place where collapse becomes possibility, where pretending dies, and where truth, quiet, trembling, and unfamiliar, starts to rise. When you've spent your entire life trying to be exceptional, the idea of being just enough can feel like failure. You were trained to shine, to rise above, to stand out, to impress. So when that light starts to flicker, when your performance falters, it doesn't just bruise your ego, it shakes your identity. Because who are you if you're not the one who always gets it right? For a long time, perfection was your shield. It kept you safe from shame, from judgment, from rejection. But now, it's keeping you from life. Because perfection, at its core, is not a standard. It's a defense. It's the belief that if you do everything flawlessly, no one will see the parts of you that feel unworthy. But here's the thing. People don't connect to perfection. They connect to presence. They don't need you to be the best. They need you to be there, real, attentive, honest. But when you've been praised your whole life for what you produce, not for who you are, presence feels like a downgrade. Brené Brown, researcher on shame and vulnerability, said something most people miss. You can't selectively numb emotions. When you numb fear, you also numb joy. When you suppress shame, you suppress creativity. When you chase perfection, you lose connection. Because connection requires risk, and risk terrifies someone who's been told their worth depends on performance. But this moment, this collapse, It's not weakness. It's your nervous system begging for release. Your body saying, I can't hold this mask anymore. Your heart whispering, I want to feel again. And here's the truth you've been avoiding. You don't have to be exceptional to be enough. You don't have to win to belong. You don't have to impress to be loved. You just have to be here. Even if you're awkward, even if you don't have the answers, even if you're messy, emotional, unfinished. Because presence is what perfection tried to replace, and never could. It's what makes connection possible, what makes healing real, what makes life feel like something again. And yes, it's terrifying, because to choose presence is to choose visibility. It's to stand there without your script, without your mask, without your curated brilliance. But it's also to finally be seen, not for what you do, but for who you are. And maybe that's the most radical thing of all, to show up, imperfect, uncertain, still healing, and say, I'm here, I'm trying, and that's enough. So here you are, not broken, not finished, just paused, between the life you've been performing and the life that's quietly asking to be lived. You've spent years carrying the weight of a title you didn't choose, the smart one, the gifted one, the one who doesn't need help, and you wore it like armor, not because it made you feel powerful, but because it made you feel protected. But that armor is heavy now. It rubs against your skin. It keeps you standing, but it doesn't let you move. And maybe the most honest thing you can do is take a breath and begin again. Not as the person who has it all figured out, not as the one who always gets it right, but as someone who is still learning how to be here. Viktor Frankl once said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Maybe this is your moment. Not to fix everything, not to transform overnight, but to quietly say, I don't want to live disconnected anymore. Because the truth is, you don't need another plan. You don't need a new version of yourself. You need permission to feel, to rest, to begin small, to mess up, to reach out, to not shine, and still matter. Maybe no one ever told you this, but you're allowed to live a life that isn't optimized for admiration. You're allowed to try, even if you're unsure. You're allowed to be seen, even if you're unfinished. And yes, it'll feel strange at first. You'll want to hide. You'll want to go back to what's familiar, the roles, the masks, the logic. But there's something on the other side of all that. Not glory, not applause, but peace. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing you're showing up as you, not as your reputation. The kind that says, I'm not a project, I'm a person. I'm not here to impress. I'm here to live. And you won't get it perfect. You'll retreat. You'll forget. You'll fall back into old patterns. But each time you notice, you'll come back a little faster, a little softer, a little more whole. This isn't about becoming brilliant again. It's about becoming real, maybe for the first time. So if this spoke to something in you, don't let it just pass. Let it mark the beginning of something quieter, but deeper. Stay. Stay with this feeling. Stay with this work. Stay with this version of yourself that isn't chasing, but choosing. And if you're willing, we'll keep walking together. You don't have to be exceptional to start again. You just have to be present. If you've made it this far, I already know something about you. You're not here just to watch content. You're here because somewhere in this story, you saw yourself. Not in the achievements, but in the ache. Not in the brilliance, but in the quiet collapse behind it. Maybe this wasn't just a video. Maybe it was a mirror. Maybe it named something in you that you've carried, silently, for years. That deep, invisible exhaustion of always needing to seem okay. That fear of being found out. That strange grief over the self you had to abandon, just to be admired. If that's you, you're not broken. You're not dramatic. You're not alone. You're human. And being human was never supposed to mean being perfect. It was supposed to mean being real, being present, being allowed. So let me say what maybe no one ever said to you, not when you needed it most. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to glow to be good. This space, this channel, exists for minds like yours, for people who feel deeply but think even deeper, for those who carry masks so polished, no one suspects the sadness behind them. And if you felt seen here, truly seen, then maybe you're exactly where you needed to be. So don't disappear again. Not into the silence. Not behind the role. Stay. Let this be your permission to begin again, gently, honestly, at your own pace. Leave a comment if something in this video spoke to your truth. I read every single one, not just to track engagement, but to witness you. Hit like if this gave language to a pain you didn't know how to name. It helps the algorithm, yes, but it also helps this reach someone else who's still lost in the fog. And if you want more, not answers, but presence, subscribe. There's more coming, more truths, more reflections, more ways to feel less alone in a world that keeps asking you to be more than human. You don't have to be more, you just have to be here. And from this moment forward, how you are. Welcome back.